Welcome to our next session on resilience during a pandemic. This time we're going to be talking about health. So more about the physical aspect. So when we talk about resilience, a lot of people tend to think resilience is really just a mental concept, is really about your mindset. But it's actually about your health as well. So your mind and your body, they both interact quite a lot to enable you to be healthy. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. And essentially what is on for the agenda. So we've got about an hour or so that we'll cover. As usual, I'm going to just quickly cover who I am for anybody that's new. I will check in with you guys, who's on the line, just so you can all say hello to each other. Then we're going to talk a bit about health and your brain. How do those two relate? We're going to look at a couple of neurochemicals so you can learn a little bit more about, what's actually going on in there. And when you're looking after your health, how does it actually affect specific chemicals that then have effects on your mindset? And after that, we'll jump into a couple of practical strategies, specifically thinking about what's been going on in the pandemic, how has our health been affected in different ways, and what can we do about it? So with that, so essentially a little bit about myself as usual. So for me, I studied a bit of neuroscience, finance, organizational psychology, a bunch of different things. I've published some research on the neuroscience of resilience. What is it? How do we define it? How do we build it? And how do we measure it along the way? Written a couple of books on this as well. So these are available if you do want to learn quite a bit more about resilience, the neuroscience of it, and how you can work on it. I've basically put all those things together into a company called Driven. So Driven is a virtual intelligence, artificial intelligence virtual coach that helps you to build resilience through short daily activities. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But in short, it kind of means I'm a bit of a resilience expert. I guess it's the easiest way I can define myself. But more importantly, let's check in with you guys. So jump onto the chat and just let us know where you're from, and are you looking for something for yourself or for a business or for clients? What brings you here today? So see, we've got Margaret from Cape Town. Good to see you again. Carol, good to see you too. And B from England, great. David, welcome back. Priscilla, you too. From Alaska, I love it. And Ronald from Jakarta again, great. Charles from Cambridge, great, welcome. And Edwin from the Philippines. Chris from Victoria, great. Christine from the Gold Coast. Rachel from Melbourne. And fantastic. Be a psychotherapist looking to help my clients during these times. Yeah, great. So these resources are like all the presentations that I do here, we make available to all of our certified coaches. So you can access them there. If you are not on our platform yet, you can just get in touch with me and we can get you on board there as well. So you can use all these resources. And Fiona Noel from Philippines as well. Great. Carol also supporting your clients. Great. And David, and addictions. So you run an addictions treatment program in New Zealand. Great. Okay, cool. Cool. So as we go through this, every now and then I'll ask you guys some questions as always. So a lot of you are returning, and for the new people, feel free to jump in there, and you can also just ask questions as we go as well. So happy to answer things as we move along, so that make it interactive. Okay, cool. So now, just thinking about health. So health is one of the 6 domains of resilience that we looked at when we did our research on, all the different aspects of resilience. And essentially, health is really about, the healthy habits that you have. So here we're not necessarily talking about, conditions and pre-existing things that you might not have a lot of control over. Here, it's quite a lot more about the things that you do have more direct control over, where you can implement strategies to actually start to improve those healthy habits. And what's really important here is that it's not just about your body, but it's about your brain as well. So your health directly impacts the health of your brain. So we're going to be looking at sleep, nutrition, and exercise, those kind of healthy habits that relate to those. And a lot of it is really about just you looking after yourself and really investing in your own physical health. And a lot of it is really about what you do consistently. So doing a health kick every now and then, for a couple of weeks, and then you're 6 months back to your old ways, and then you do another couple of weeks, that doesn't really work that well. It's more about, can you stick to these routines in the long term? And that's kind of where resilience comes back into the picture as well. So that's really the first big point, is that it's not just for your body. Health supports your brain as well. So what do we mean by that? So essentially, your health supports your resilience, and your resilience supports your health. So this is a very interconnected relationship, because if you think about, it's kind of easy to know that I should exercise regularly, that I should cut down on sugar, and I should eat more vegetables and things like that, and I should go to bed at a reasonable time. It's easy to know those things, but actually sticking to that in the long term, and especially sticking to it every time there's some kind of setback, that actually requires quite a lot of resilience. So it's one of those things where you need kind of more resilience to support your health, and then the health that you achieve, having a healthy body, that supporting a healthy brain and a healthy mindset, then enables resilience to function as well, so that you get this kind of constant interaction between the two. So that's really important, just to be aware of that kind of bi-directional relationship that these two have together, and that it's not just about looking good or something like that. It's really about looking after your mental health to a large extent as well. So something else that kind of comes in with this is that looking after your health kind of enhances your natural equilibrium. So here, if you're looking after yourself, then you reduce inflammation. And inflammation, as you probably know, is an underlying causal factor for a lot of different diseases, from even for mental health diseases like depression as inflammation related to it, to heart disease and diabetes, and so many other types of conditions as well. So being able to regulate that is really important. And just simple things like keeping a more normal heartbeat, and reducing blood pressure, calmer breathing. Those kind of factors also affect just how much your limbic brain is activated, how much cortisol is being flooded into the system. Having those stress hormones, if we can reduce that, then it reduces a lot of stress on the body. So and that of course influences your immune system too. And if you can have a better immune system, then you are generally better able to fend off all the different types of pathogens and everything else that you might face along the way. So all of these things just help you to maintain a more healthy natural state. And what then of course that means is that if you have less physical disruptions with your body, then there's less for you to stress about, because if you're healthier, there's less ailments and things you need to worry about, there's less pain and things like that. Then it just kind of makes it easier to do all the other things that are really important to you. It's basically having that healthy body that supports you in whatever is important to you. So quick question for you guys before we jump into this in a bit more detail. And I'm kind of curious here. So do you guys notice the effects of staying healthy on your mindset? So if you do exercise and you look after your and you eat well and you get enough sleep, do you notice differences in your mindset? So I'm curious on your thoughts with this. So jump into the chat and let me know what you guys think. Margaret, yes, more positive. Priscilla, sometimes. Yeah. Rachel, when I'm unwell, I have a more negative outlook. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. B, I tend to stay in a more positive mood for longer. Ronald, more energized. Yeah. Chris, yes. David, yeah, for sure. Yeah, daily gym exercise helps me dive right into the day. Nice. Christine, better concentration and optimism. Yeah, so seems like a general general agreement there that it does affect your mindset, which is kind of interesting because I'm a little bit different, I guess, because when I eat really unhealthy foods and all that, and when I don't exercise, I don't actually feel much different. Um, and it's one of those weird things where um, I I enjoy, doing workouts and all that because of what it gets me later on. But it's not like after workout I feel like, oh yeah, that was fantastic, what a great workout. I generally just kind of feel tired after workout. For me, it's kind of like writing. Writing a book is a really painful process, um, and it's not something that's really enjoyable. But I do enjoy having written, which is kind of the, when it's all done, then it's like, okay, that was fantastic, great. But the process is sometimes not that enjoyable. So yeah, so it's kind of interesting to see that there's a very big agreement from you guys that it does really work. But for me, it's more like, hey, it's something that I do because of what I know it gets me afterwards. I know that it's important and it supports my health and all those kind of things. So yeah, cool, interesting. So now let's look a little bit about the neurochemicals that's related to these. And there's two neurochemicals in particular that we'll be looking at. The first is neuropeptide Y. Now you might be wondering about the reason for it being called neuropeptide Y, and well, why not? I couldn't help that one, but it's something to do with tyrosine, and tyrosine is abbreviated as Y. So anyways, so what does neuropeptide Y do? Well, it is related to reduced anxiety and stress. So it's got an anxiolytic effect. So if there's more neuropeptide Y floating around in the brain, then we tend to be less stressed. It's also linked to lower levels of depression. So here, kind of seeing an important trend. And it also reduces perceptions of pain. So even if you have the same amount of activation of the actual pain neurons in your fingers, for example, if you have more neuropeptide Y, then that signal will not be felt as strongly. So you've got a reduced perception there. It lowers blood pressure, and curiously, it also reduces voluntary alcohol intake. So maybe it's related to less anxiety and less depression, and therefore less feeling the need to drink. So that means this is quite an important chemical when we think about in terms of resilience in particular. So there's been quite a lot of research that's been done on this with special forces personnel, where they had a look at people who have undergone a whole lot of training, and what do their brains actually look like, what's going on in there. And that's where they found that people that have done a whole lot of preparation and a lot of training do tend to have a lot more neuropeptide Y. And that's where we kind of come into the things about what actually increases neuropeptide Y. So if we see all these good effects of it, what can we do to increase it? Well, one of them is just try about doing more exercise, gives you more neuropeptide Y. But then also things like mental training. So like they were doing with the special forces, and even some things like preparing for interrogation to resistance exercises, those type of things, which is kind of more of the visualization type of exercises that we talked about in last week's workshop. So there, you're kind of posing scenarios at yourself, and you're training yourself to think through those type of scenarios and preparing for it. And then it seems like as you do that kind of preparation and those preparatory exercises, then neuropeptide Y starts to increase in the brain, and it's basically is the more the chemical side that underpins your ability to be resilient when you're facing those kind of challenges. So that's really interesting. Then it also increases when you've got more BDNF. So what's BDNF? Well, this is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and probably one of the really big ones. So some of you might be familiar with it already, but this is a really important chemical in a lot of different ways because it facilitates neural connection. It increases plasticity. So this is how how easily do your neurons connect to each other, form new connections, break connections as well. Even BDNF really enhances that process with how um, again, for the coaches of you who've gone through the certification training, we talked a lot about the mechanics uh, of how neuroplasticity actually works with AMPA expression and NMDA expression, and BDNF really underpins that process. And in short, it basically just increases learning and memory, and it increases adaptation. So BDNF is really important when you're trying to learn a new skill, you're trying to adapt to a new circumstance, and you need to quickly make a whole bunch of changes in your brain to be able to connect to that. Then that is where BDNF is really important. So B for the, what does BDNF stand for? So brain-derived neurotrophic factor. So make sure you note that one down because it's very important chemicals. There's an article about BDNF on our website as well if you do want to read about it in more detail. And Christina, just noticed your comment there. Maybe you don't do that long enough to feel the bad effects. That might be because I have been exercising and all that very consistently for a very long time. But yeah, might have a point. So BDNF, what can we do to increase it? Well, exercise, once again, very important. And here we see if we do exercise for about 4 times a week, a lot of aerobic exercise has a lot of evidence behind it to show that it is actually is very important to build BDNF, but also doing weight exercises as well also works. So the important thing is that you get at least 4 days a week of rigorous exercise, and that again is really important to remember that this is not about just building a nice looking body or something like that. This is directly about supporting your brain's ability to learn and to adapt and to grow and to basically keep you mentally sharp. So to keep that in mind, I guess. And then also other things like less sugar. Sugar, especially sugar combined with fatty foods, is directly linked to lowering BDNF. So just eating healthy food, again, support your brain. And getting quality sleep as well. If you miss out on sleep, so sleep is important for so many different processes in the brain to be able to just to help you memorize things and to consolidate memory, and to help clean out waste materials in the brain that build up. So really important to get sleep as well. And then even other things like just spending quality time with people is one of those interesting things. Is part of what they call an enriched environment. If you have that kind of enriched environment where you're getting that kind of stimulation, what we see with that as well is it also increases BDNF. But really the big things that it kind of comes down to for us is exercise, nutrition, and sleep. So these are 3 very practical factors that we can focus on and we can build some strategies around and actually implement, so we can facilitate just these 2 out of the many neurochemicals in your brain, neuropeptide Y and BDNF. So if we can kind of support those 2, then we're already on a good track to just kind of helping us feel great and stay mentally sharp and protect us in the long term. So let's go through each of these 3. So here we'll talk a little bit about how do they relate to your brain. We'll look at the impact that COVID is having on them so far, some strategies, and then I'll get you guys to chime in with some of ideas from your side. And I'll tell you guys as well about what have I been doing just myself, because obviously, I've been impacted by all of these things as well. So exercise is really a big one. And I suppose, we can kind of hypothesize that it's probably because in ancient times we were probably a lot more physically active than we are now, and that all these kind of processes in the body and the brain kind of, evolve together. And maybe to some extent, if, beings that were more active were better at surviving, and then you get in all these kind of interactions where if you're more active, then you get more of the neurochemicals that help you with survival. Who really knows? All kind of ideas. But essentially, what we do see from the research and the evidence is that if you exercise more, it protects you against neurodegenerative diseases. So whether it's Alzheimer's, dementia, all those type of neurodegenerative diseases have a reduced likelihood of affecting you, and a reduced extent to which they might affect you in the future if you do regular exercise. Again, really important that it's about consistent exercise, and it's not just a little bit here and there, but it's something we do over time. So it improves network efficiency. So this is, all the connections in the brain. How well do they communicate with each other? How well do they connect to each other? So even like brain size and the connectivity between those neurons is all supported by exercise. So and the better your brain can connect, the better you can learn and adapt, and all those things that we talked about before, and support that neuroplasticity that is so important for us to really maintain a healthy lifestyle and a healthy mindset as the environment changes, because nothing really stays the same, especially as we've seen now with COVID and coronavirus, everything that's happening right now. It's suddenly big shifts, and we need to be able to adapt to that really quickly. And that is really where we need our brain's ability to be able to quickly form new connections, figure out how are we going to do things, how do I need to think now, how do I need to act and behave to essentially have a good experience in this time that we have right now, which is very different from what it was just like 2 months ago. So and this is kind of other interesting stuff that they saw from the research, is that if you do regular exercise, it helps you to think faster and even reduce mistakes. So of course, these are all kind of memorization exercises that they put people through. People who do a lot of exercise, people versus people who don't, and all these kind of memory cards and all these type of things, and just how many mistakes do people make even with like mathematical problems and all kind of fun things like that. So it's just kind of interesting to see how exercise has this kind of impact on just our ability to think, which makes it so important. So memory recall, all that kind of stuff. So keep that in mind. So many different benefits to exercise. And this, of course, is beyond just the normal things of, it supports your heart health, reduces cardiovascular risk, and it just makes you feel stronger, makes you feel great. It improves your confidence and all those type of things, just because, you feel better than you normally do just in the normal course of your day. So many benefits, really important. And of course, then we get to COVID, and well, now we've got couple of problems. One of them, of course, is that, well, the gyms are generally closed. And I just started going to the gym because I used to have a whole big gym set up in my own unit before I moved house in December. And I was basically working out with my whole gym set up for about 10 years. So I was really used to having my own little gym and all that. And then just in end of December, I finally went to and joined an actual gym because I don't have a home gym anymore. And then a couple of months later, COVID comes along and the gym shuts down, and for the first time, I don't actually have a gym to go through. So yeah, that's something that's impacted a lot of people. A lot of people have been going to classes, and then we don't get classes anymore. And just being stuck at home as well just makes it a lot harder to stay motivated and to even want to do exercise. So these are some really challenges that make something like exercise, which is already really hard for people to get into, that much harder to actually get into. So what can you do? As Donna just pointed out, there's a lot of online classes and exercise groups now popping up that you can join. Of course, for people in Australia, at least, you can still go outside and do some exercise there, even though the gyms are not really available. Setting up some home gyms now, of course, is becoming a bigger thing. So personally, I've been getting into resistance bands. Um, so so I got myself like these kind of resistance bands. I've got a whole bunch of these that I've now set up my own little home gym with, and because they don't really take up much space, and they're actually kind of fun. I've been enjoying the workouts. Some of them are kind of more effective than going to the gym. So I'm kind of wondering, like, do I really want to go back to the gym after this? Because they're kind of fun, but there are other aspects of the gym that I kind of miss. So and it's once again, it's one of those things where you've kind of quickly switch modality to something else in a different way of doing it. So it's again comes back to your brain and your own creativity, and and to researching and all that, and figuring out like, oh yeah, this is how I can do it, and I used to do that exercise before, and here's a different way I can do it. So let's try it out. And a lot of it's just been me as well, just doing a lot of searching on YouTube and looking at how other people are doing resistance band workouts to see what else could I do that could target different muscles and all that type of stuff. So so yeah, and with that, of course, for you guys, how are you going with exercise? Are you actually getting quite a bit of exercise in at the moment? If you're looking at that kind of 4 days a week type of exercise schedule, is it kind of what you're getting still, or or are you running into some challenges there to actually follow through with it? And if so, what else can you do to improve that? Or if you're doing great, what's been working for you so far? David, your trainer uses an app and I have a program that keeps you on track. Great. Cool. Judith, daily walks, resistance, and yeah, nice. No, Zoom sessions, great. Heaps of exercise during COVID. Yeah, nice. Walking the dog, yeah, that's great. Walking every day, yoga online. Yeah, I did a bit of yoga as well. Cycling, stretching, great. Yeah, I've actually started doing a bit more exercise than I normally do. It's because it's so easy now. I can just do it at home again. Gardening, great. Running, yeah, it's great if you guys can still actually get a bit outside. Trainer with FaceTime sessions, yeah, I love it. Breathing and relaxation cardio, nice. Personal trainer. Kayaking as the pools are closed. Hey, yeah, kayaking sounds pretty cool. Chasing grandkids, yeah. I don't know. That sounds a bit strenuous to me. Be careful. Cool. Okay, cool. So it sounds like you guys have quite a few things that you're doing already, which is great to hear. And up and down the stairs. Yeah, it's true. I do actually have a lot of stairs now. I could do some stair runs as well. Cool. So it sounds like you guys are making some pretty good progress over there, and yeah, that's really important. And the trick now is to keep going with that. So if you find something that's kind of working, then don't give up on it too easily. Make sure that you keep going and find that motivation so you can do this consistently every day. And then as we start to switch back to kind of a post-COVID kind of world, then keep going as well. So that's kind of where the rest of the resilience domains come in as well. With like vision, which is more about setting goals, having those kind of goals that keeps you motivated, so you can keep doing these kind of workouts and exercises consistently. Tenacity, which we'll be talking about next week, which is specifically about persistence and motivation. So then we're going to be talking about dopamine and how does dopamine come into actually motivating you and keeping you motivated to do the right things. Like how do you guide your mind to those type of things? So it's really important to kind of use all those different resilience aspects to support you to stay consistent with this over time. All right, cool. Pauline, definitely got to set up a home gym. I recommend it. All right. So let's talk a bit about nutrition, which is another big one. And here, your brain really needs the right foods to thrive. And especially if we think about kind of deficiencies that you might have. So like micronutrients, like vitamins and minerals, there are plenty of those where if you don't get enough or if you get too much, then it directly impacts the functioning of your brain, and it can give you a bit of a brain fog, or and all different types of effects that you might feel, and even affect your memory as well, and how clearly you can think. So keeping in mind those that you actually get the right kind of foods in your diet is really important. Now, let me close that. Cool. So one of the challenges that we have, of course, is that the brain is really geared towards liking unhealthy foods. Now, especially if you are looking at something like donuts or chocolate or cookies, where it's essentially a combination of um, 50% fat to 50% sugar. It's that kind of specific ratio that they found is really the most attractive for the brain, in terms of just really. Well, let me just keep getting messages here. Let me just close that down. Great. Cool. So that combination of 50% fat, 50% sugar is really what the brain wants the most. And this is kind of an evolutionary thing, because that was such a rare combination back in ancient times, that if you kind of come across that at some point, then the brain just wants as much of that as possible, because that combination builds fat really, really quickly. And fat, of course, is kind of a storage mechanism which helps you for survival. In case that you don't have any food anymore, then the body can start breaking down fat to get energy and essentially keep going. So now, of course, in modern times, the body doesn't really know that we've got supermarkets everywhere, and we can get food all the time. So it doesn't really need to crave those kind of foods anymore, and it doesn't really need to store them much fat anymore. But of course, the body doesn't update itself that quickly. So that's why it's still kind of hardwired into the brain to just really want those foods. So an interesting, if we have those a lot of those foods, then of course it impacts, like we saw before, it reduces BDNF. It then also reduces neuropeptide Y. So the effects on the brain is not that great, which is kind of interesting how that happened, where sure, the brain really wants it, but it's not actually good for the brain. It's more about just pure physical survival stuff, which is more about what is housed in the impulsive brain. So the amygdala and all those areas, which is much more emotional thinking. So it doesn't really care about what's the impact to the smart brain and the prefrontal cortex. It's really just about, hey, this stuff builds a lot of fat. I want that. Give it to me now. So, and that's where we kind of have to teach ourselves to want healthier foods, which is really something where you kind of have to override those desires of the limbic brain, and say that, yeah, okay, I feel that desire for it, but it's not that great for us, so let's not eat too much of that. We can enjoy it now and then, but let's not go overboard. Let's eat a lot of vegetables and all those things, and now and then we can enjoy these other things as well. Just jumping over to Claire's question quickly: how do you know if you're deficient in nutrients? So there's a whole lot of different signs and symptoms of nutritional deficiencies. The interesting thing there is that a lot of vitamins and vitamin supplements are not really necessary, provided that you eat kind of a wide variety of foods. So generally, if you just kind of eat a fairly healthy diet, then you wouldn't have any deficiencies. So yeah, you can do some Googling and just look for vitamin deficiency symptoms, and you'll see a whole lot of things, and probably a whole lot of them will You might go like, oh, I think I've got that, or I think I've got that. But it's kind of more important to look at your diet. Like, do you get enough vegetables? If you're getting a lot of different vegetables, then usually you'd be generally fine. There are some some other minerals and things that you generally would get from meats. So if you're a vegetarian, that tends to be okay because you can get it fairly easily from cheese and eggs and those kind of things. But if you're vegan, that's kind of where it becomes a little bit harder, like specifically with B12, those kind of vitamins, where you usually would get them from some kind of animal product. So there, yeah, I would suggest you just kind of look at what are you eating. Is it a fairly wide and balanced diet, or is there like food groups that you are kind of cutting out at the moment? And if so, then you might want to look at that. So the first book that I wrote, called Think Lean Method, actually goes into a lot of detail about all those different signs and symptoms and the breakdowns of all the different food groups. So I did a whole bunch of analysis on that initially. So you could get that if you want to look into it in a bit more detail. Anthony was asking, what foods increase BDNF? So there aren't really necessarily foods specifically that increase BDNF. There are more foods that decrease it. So, and that's where we find that combination of 50% sugar, 50% fat, those type of foods. So, donuts, baked goods, chocolates, sweets, those kind of things, they would generally be reducing BDNF. So it's kind of limiting those to a large extent so that it doesn't have such a big effect in reducing it. Christine's just saying, eat food, not too much, mostly protein, vegetables, and fruit. Yeah, easy. Whole foods. As long as you eat whole foods, then it's generally okay. Cool. Periods of abstinence. Yeah, fasting could work. So so that's just what we were talking about. So the sugar and fatty foods, they're really the ones that reduce BDNF. So if you think about foods that can increase it, well, just eat a lot of vegetables. And it's kind of vegetables is interesting. The more vegetables you eat, the more it increases your lifespan as well. So there was a massive study that they did where they saw that the people who eat around 7.7 servings of vegetables a day, and a serving is usually about 70 grams as well, a lot of sevens, have something like 50% less likely to die from any cause than people who eat less. And if you eat 10 portions of vegetables, then your life expectancy goes up even more. So basically vegetables is kind of the magic fruit. So vegetables, not fruit, by the way, because fruit does have sugar in it and doesn't necessarily is as nutrient dense as vegetables are. So do something with that. So what's the impact of COVID? Of course, well, we're stuck inside and there's all kinds of snacks and things around. And, when you're inside all day long, it's kind of hard not to kind of wander over to the pantry and the fridge and do some snacking. So that's a bit tricky, and it could be harder to get foods and ingredients that you might normally do. Maybe it's a bit harder to actually go to the grocery stores as often. There's limitations on how much you can buy of certain things. Like I didn't even realize that there's limits on the amounts of frozen vegetables that you can buy, and I wanted to stock up again on the weekends, and I had like 5 packs of them, and they said, no, yeah, you could only have 2, and I'm like, what? I can't survive on that. So anyway, so those kind of things make it a little bit tricky. So some simple practical things to do, and this is my always very controversial suggestion, is to get rid of snacks. And when I say get rid of them, I don't mean eat them all at once. I mean throw them out. So you take the actual snacks and you pick them up and you put them in the bin without eating them on the way. And the concept there is very simple. Like if they're not in the house, if they're not there, then you can't really eat them. So very practical way to just reduce how much snacking and all that you actually do. And yes, as Christine just pointed out, then once they're out of the house, don't buy more of them, because if you don't buy more, then you don't have them, and then you don't eat them. So yes, very practical way. And yeah, things like carrots, great for snacking instead. So replacing with healthier alternatives is a very simple strategy to use. So cutting out sugar is a big one. So this is one of the kind of the myths, of course, that are still out there quite a lot. Is a lot of people try to cut out fat, but they still eat a lot of sugar. And fat is not actually unhealthy. Even saturated fat is not unhealthy. It just becomes unhealthy when you're eating it with sugars and refined carbohydrates. So what's refined carbohydrates? So this would be like bread, pasta, rice, especially white rice. Like even brown rice is often just kind of white rice that is, has some brown sugar or maple syrup or something to color it brown. Those type of things. So when you're combining fats with those kind of carbohydrates, that's when it become unhealthy. But if you're just kind of eating fats with low GI carbohydrates like vegetables, and you're eating it with protein, something like that, then fat isn't actually bad. And fat is actually an essential nutrient. You need to have fat, versus carbohydrate, which is not an essential nutrient. You can actually live quite happily without ever eating any carbs at all, which is kind of funny, right? But protein is essential, fat is essential, and then all the micronutrients, they're also essential as well. So make sure you cut down on sugar, and looking at added sugar content in all the different products like sauces and things like that. A lot of those have a lot of extra sugar in there that usually if it tastes good, it's got sugar in it. So and it's very kind of a simple rule as well for healthy eating is eat whole foods. So what's a whole food? Well, it's something that doesn't have an ingredient list attached to it. So if you kind of stick to that, that's when it's actually really simple to eat healthy. And but usually we want to eat more, a bit more variety, and that's when we start to complicate things, and then that's when you kind of need to start looking at the nutritional information list just to see just how much sugar is there in this thing, because there's usually some in there. And especially if you see sugar combined with and carbohydrates combined with fats, that's kind of when this is not necessarily the most healthy thing to eat. Experimenting with home cooking, because if you're home a lot now, this is a perfect time. So I've spoken to a lot of my friends who are doing all kinds of cooking and baking and things like that, and trying out different recipes because you got time. And why not try different kinds of healthy recipes, and find more things that you like. I like Chris's idea: put a padlock and chain on your pantry and refrigerator. Yeah, and maybe you should leave the key with someone else so you can ask them for permission. And carrot cakes. So what do I do? So I do bulk meal prep. So I've been doing this for about 15 years now. So every weekend I make all my food for the week ahead, and only takes about 2 hours or so at the moment for a whole bunch of different types of meals that I make. And it's basically I do like big pans of vegetable bakes and different kind of recipes and things like that. And then I just quickly put it all together, make it, package it up, put it in the fridge. So for me, it's really quick and easy every day to just take something out and quickly heat that up, and meal's all ready to go. Which means I don't ever have to do takeout, especially because I tend to work a lot as well, so I don't have that much time during the week to make different meals and things. So this kind of makes it really easy for me to stay consistent and to know what am I actually eating. Because if you're ordering food from a restaurant, most restaurants Even restaurants that put cafes that make healthy food tend to put quite a bit more sugar into their meals, even salads, things like that, because it makes it taste better. Because for a restaurant, if a food doesn't taste good, then people are not going to come back. So even if they're selling health foods, if their health foods doesn't taste that good, then people don't come back. So they always kind of lean towards just make the customer happy. If the customer thinks it's healthy, then that's close enough. It doesn't actually have to be healthy. So that's kind of where it's always a lot better for you to make your own food, because then you know what's in it, and you know that okay, this is probably healthy, and it's probably not going to taste as good as a restaurant, which is probably a good thing, because you don't want to get too used to that, that kind of artificially enhanced food is how things should be. It's almost like kind of your taste buds being on drugs. Drugs kind of gives you a false perception of how life should feel. So this is kind of the same thing where there's all this kind of food science to make foods taste unnaturally good and make you not want to eat at home, but rather eat foods from restaurants or snacks and those kind of things. Is actually this massive field of science where they it's kind of fascinating to see just how much they can engineer molecule sizes and shapes to bind properly with your taste buds, so you get all these kind of taste sensations that you can't get just from making food yourself and from natural foods. So that's there's something interesting to keep in mind, that being mindful and enjoying how foods taste like just plain vegetables, and focusing on enjoying that, and recognizing that if you do eat something like ice cream or snacks and those kind of things that taste really, really good, to kind of understand as well that that is not really how food should taste. You can enjoy it still, but don't change your expectations to say that, yeah, that's what I want all the time. So it's kind of setting that expectations for yourself. Yes. So, so let's see. What do you guys think? So how are you guys going with healthy nutrition? Are you eating healthy at the moment? Are you getting a lot of vegetables and all those kind of things? Are you snacking a lot at the moment? What do you guys think? And yeah, what can you do to improve if you feel like maybe not eating as well as you should? Claire, could be better. Yeah. Carol, grow our own vegetables. Yeah, that's great. I love it. More home cooking. Priscilla, eating healthy. Great. Helen, vegetable garden. Yeah, I wish I had the space over here. It'd be nice. Arwa, control the quality of size of the meal. Yeah, that's very useful when you're doing it yourself. David, HelloFresh. Yeah, that's an option. Andrew, been eating more vegetarian food since lockdown. Yeah, same here. I'm pretty much vegetarian-ish now. Beef, fresh food seems to be more available than processed foods at the moment. So yeah, well, that's great. And your son has discovered a passion for healthy cooking. Nice. Judith, cooking at home, trying new dishes. Yeah, awesome. Anthony, less carbs, more protein. Good idea. And then you just got to do it consistently, huh? More home cooking. Noel, consultant, nutritionist. Yeah, and that's of course why we have a whole field of nutrition and so many nutritionists around, especially if and you've got quite a bit of catching up to do in terms of just understanding of what really are healthy foods, and spending some time to learn all of that. So yeah, fantastic. So Andrew, weekly menu has helped. Great. Natalie, usually pretty good, but home today. It's cold and rainy, perfect weather for hot drinks and leftover Easter eggs. Ha ha ha. Yeah, see, that's kind of so things like Easter and Christmas and those kind of things. If it's like those kind of times and you can kind of not overdo it, too much in between, then you can kind of enjoy those periods. Because for me as well, it's not about restricting yourself and say that I'm never eating these kind of foods. Like you can eat it, and when you do eat it without feeling guilty about it. and then just kind of set yourself up so that most of the time you're eating healthy, so that when you do eat something that's a bit less healthy, you don't have to feel guilty about it, and you can just actually enjoy it. So that's kind of helpful for the mindset as well. And new types of sauces for the veggies. Yeah, just make sure those sauces don't have a whole bunch of sugar in them, right? And yeah, Jennifer, doing the weekend prep, and then during the week, I just add some extra fresh vegetables. Awesome. See, it's so easy when you do it like that, right? It's like, hold on, and it's so fast. Oh, I just love it. I don't know, like everyone should do it. Well, that's just my thoughts, anyways. Yeah, lots of water. Yeah, and water is kind of important as well. Not because water has any kind of magical healing properties, but more because of what water replaces. So if it replaces, sugary drinks and soft drinks and those kind of things, then that has a massive impact on your health, because those other drinks is very unhealthy. So that's where more water is always very useful. All right, so let's look at sleep quickly. Sleep, of course, very important. It's also one of the ones where you notice really quickly the effects of it on your mindset when you don't get enough sleep. But at the same time, a lack of sleep reduces, and lack of quality sleep as well, reduces BDNF. So just because you get like 7 or 8 hours doesn't necessarily mean that those are 7 or 8 good hours. So there's a difference between sleep and quality sleep. So there's quite a few things you can do to improve quality sleep, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit down the track. But yeah, a lack of sleep also increases cortisol, which is of course a stress hormone. The more cortisol is in your systems, cortisol is also directly and inversely related to BDNF. So the more cortisol you have, the less BDNF you have, and it also influences in inflammation and all those other kind of things. So useful to keep cortisol down. And what's interesting is a lack of sleep also makes you more impulsive. So it increases blood flow to the impulsive brain. So this is an interesting research, interesting study that they did, where they got some people where they got them sleep deprived, and then they would, versus a control group, they would go like, would you like an apple or a hamburger? And the people who were sleep deprived were much more likely to pick a hamburger than an apple. So, and it's just kind of interesting how, that those kind of impulsive decisions that we tend to make become much more likely when we haven't gotten enough sleep. So very important to get sleep for a variety of reasons. It's one of the biggest challenges that society faces these days, is just getting enough quality sleep. Chris, I gotta invite you guys over for lunch. Oh, maybe could. You can check out my meal prep. Nah. So what's the impact of COVID? Of course, there's a lot of broken routines. So there's a lot of people going to sleep at different times now than they normally would, because you're not really getting up when you used to. So might as well go to bed later and watch a bit more TV or something like that. There's also a lot of stress and a lot of uncertainty, a lot more things in your mind, and that might just make it harder to sleep. So that's some of the comments that we've seen from people in previous workshops, where they were talking about just having a hard time falling asleep because they're so worried about so many different things. And then of course you've got people on the other end, like David, who's just getting tons more sleep now than before, which is great. Cool. It all affects us differently. And it can also be harder to separate work from home. So because it's like all these environments is kind of merging into one, especially if you're working from home now. So it's just kind of, it's got all these different effects that it might have on us. So what are some strategies that that you can use? So of course, to improve quality of sleep. So one of the important thing is to reduce the amount of light in your room. So even like just like LEDs, those kind of things, or street lights coming in from outside, shining against the curtains or something like that. The more light there is in your room, the more it reduces the quality of your sleep. So in my unit, actually, I've got like some of the city lights from the outside shining against the curtains, and they're not fully dark. So I just recently got like some of these one of these sleep masks, and this is one of the ones with these these really fancy kind of, they look like the earphone things that go over there, that where they go over the eye, so that they really go really dark. There's like I think Manta Ray is the main brand that sells these, which are really expensive. So this is kind of like the cheap knockoff version of it, but they work just as well. So you can do things like that, like if you really don't have an option of properly darkening your room. And of course, other things like making sure you keep a good routine going, less alcohol as well. So if you can avoid alcohol 6 hours before sleep, if you have it 6 hours before you go to sleep, then it tends to reduce the quality of your sleep. You tend to fall asleep more easily, but the actual sleep itself is reduced quality. So it just means you're feeling less rested when you wake up in the morning. Similar for caffeine, also around that 6 hours before bed. If you have it, then it also reduces the quality of sleep by about the equivalent of an hour or so. So if you can stick to caffeine in the mornings or very early in the afternoon, that is a lot more effective to maintain good sleep quality. So a couple of things to keep in mind there. So how's it going for you guys? So how are you going with your sleep? Anything you can think of to improve the quality of your sleep? Are your homes dark enough? Are you drinking yourself to bed every night? What's happening? So, Christine, same regular bedtime routine. That's good. Yeah, for myself as well. So I've been keeping the same routine that I did before all this stuff started. So I'm working from home now, but yeah, I still go to bed same time, which is around 9 o'clock, and then I get up at 5 o'clock, do a workout, all that kind of stuff. Kim wanting an afternoon nap. Yeah, some pretty common thing these days, I would imagine. And yeah, don't have the room too hot. So a bit of a cooler room is actually something that helps improve sleep quality as well. Good pillow to suit your neck. Always sleep well, healthy hippocampus. Yeah, very true. Natalie, doing well, cool. And now I know why I like a lunchtime wine instead of a nighttime one. Not during work hours, I see. Yeah. Princella, wear an eye mask. Yeah, good. Yeah, I wanted to get one of those because I used to have like the other eye masks that would just go directly in your eyes, but I found like it had over time it had too much pressure on my eyeballs themselves. So these ones are kind of nice, they're really dark and they don't actually press against my eyes themselves. Chris, brain is exhausted from too much thinking, so fall asleep easier. Yeah, that's helpful. Charles, dark room make a big difference. Nice. Rachel, cool room to sleep in. Regular bed routine. Yeah, nice. Claire, take magnesium if you can't sleep. Interesting. If it helps, cool. And find that I'm waking up during the night. Yeah, stress for Cleo. Yeah, and that's something that's happening with a lot of people, because especially if all the COVID stuff is having a bit more of an effect on your life for family and friends, yeah, those are things that tend to keep us up. So being able to kind of compartmentalize that and leave that for the morning is useful. Yeah, if you can avoid taking a nap during the day, that's usually helpful as well, to make sure you fall asleep. It can be a bit hard, but if you can push through, then yeah, it makes it easier to sleep at night as well. Cool. Get off the screens well before bedtime. Yeah, that's something that that's general advice now as well. Especially if the screens have a lot more blue light in them, then that kind of keeps your brain a little bit more awake. So because it affects your circadian rhythms, where your brain is kind of used to, if there's a lot of blue light out, it means it's earlier in the day, I need to stay awake. And then when the sun is going down, there's more red light. And that red light kind of signals for the circadian rhythms that, hey, it's kind of getting later now, I should be getting tired. But if you're watching screens and all that, which has got a lot more blue light, then of course it's like the brain is like, oh, what's going on? It's like been a day for 15 hours now. So there are some apps and things you can apply as well to increase the amount of red light and decrease blue light on your phone and on your screens. So that's something that you can try as well if you do want to stay on your screen for all night long. Yeah, and then so Andrew, I've always been more of a night person. my brain gets really active again around 10 p.m. So yeah, 9:30, go to sleep before your brain gets active. Problem solved. Maybe not. So anyways, the really important point I want you guys to remember is that it is really all about consistency. So don't just do this a little bit here and there. Try and stick to it in the long term. So that's been a big theme for me with all these kind of things is, meal preps and exercise and all that kind of stuff. Stick to it over time and just keep doing it, and really develop that discipline to do it even if you don't feel like it. Don't wait to be motivated to do it, because a lot of times you're not going to be motivated. So if you rely on motivation, then probably means you're going to skip on things like exercise a lot. So we'll be talking about this a lot in next week's workshop. So I highly recommend to come along for that, learn more about dopamine and a lot of people kind of misunderstand what dopamine is and what it actually does. So that'll be interesting. I recommend that one. Yeah, and I'll just quickly mention, so Driven essentially is something that is designed to help people stay consistent. So of course, Driven is a virtual resilience coach. It's got all these daily activities that are like 5 minutes each, and they teach you about all these different things, including all of these health things that we've been talking about, more about the neuroscience of health and sleep and nutrition and exercise. It's also something that you can chat to anytime if you have something on your mind, like if you're stressed about something. So this is stuff that I've used in the middle of the night as well, when I've just got something I need to get off my head. Then I can go into Driven, have a quick chat, and just kind of get those thoughts out and structure it a little bit more. So helps you keep track over time. It's got a scientifically validated resilience assessment, shows you where your strengths are, what are your opportunities for improvement. There's a whole bunch of different resilience skills that it takes you through, all based on that assessment to look at what's most valuable for you to do today, and all this kind of quick techniques and things as well. That is just some things that might help you right in the moment, whether it's a sleep technique or something like that, which I was just using it the other day. Actually, there's these sleep sounds that you can listen to, and I was listening to the rain and thunder one. It's my favorite one. So, and when people use this, so if you actually stick to it, same thing with consistency. Once you stick to it, then you tend to get around 25% improvement in resilience over time, and that protects against so many other mental diseases and things as well. So it's a really useful tool. Highly recommend you check it out. So you can try it for free on the App Store. Just search for the Driven Resilience app. Give it a shot. See what you think, and it might just help you to build some new resilience skills. And of course, you can join us if you want to chat on our Reddit group, so /r/driven, or join our Instagram page as well, where we mention all these workshops and things as well. Just join us at Driven. And of course, next week, we'll be talking about tenacity. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's actually going to be our last one in this series. So I highly recommend to come along for that and just learn a little bit more about persistence, bouncing back, motivation, dopamine, all those kind of things. How do we use that as really one of the cornerstone domains of resilience? And yeah, it's kind of the last part of this puzzle that we've been building over the last couple of weeks. And yeah, see you guys next time. Have a good one.